The crowd buzzed with anticipation, cameras flashing as the white glass doors of the Chicago International Auto Expo slid open. Inside, every corner gleamed with polished metal, ambient lighting, and the smell of new tech. The heart of the stage was occupied by the Voltara Motors Showcase, a towering display of glass and carbon fiber, spotlighting their revolutionary electric hypercar, the V12 Whisper. It wasn't just a car. It was a declaration. This was the machine that would silence all competition. At the center of the media storm stood Aaron Drake, the celebrated lead engineer of Voltara. Clad in a custom-tailored navy suit, black shirt open at the collar, and sleek Italian loafers, he had the swagger of a man who had already won. His perfectly gelled hair didn't move under the hot stage lights. His voice echoed across the room, amplified through the mic clipped to his lapel. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at 10 years of work. A masterpiece of efficiency and design. You'll never hear her roar, because she doesn't need to. The V12 Whisper speaks through silence." The audience responded with polite applause. Aaron offered a practiced smile and raised his hand like a magician preparing for the final trick. "And now, the world's first public ignition of the Whisper's engine system. Watch closely." He tapped a sleek wireless fob. Nothing happened. A flicker on the LED screen. A pause. Then a hiss. A sharp mechanical shriek. And finally, a low puff of smoke trailing from beneath the rear side panel. People gasped. Phones went up. Cameras clicked. Aaron's smile froze. He tapped the fob again. Still nothing. The display flickered to black. Then the headlights blinked erratically, like a dying heartbeat. The tension in the room thickened. Somewhere, a whisper rose. "Did it just short?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "Minor bug," he announced, trying to laugh it off. "This is a prototype. Happens sometimes. Our tech team will get it back up." Two Voltara technicians in black polos hurried onto the stage. One slid under the car, the other opened the dashboard console. Their hands moved quickly, but their faces betrayed something worse than confusion: fear. From the back of the room, Layla Morgan watched it all unfold. She leaned on a dolly cart loaded with shipping crates and spare wheels, her navy blue coveralls half-zipped, revealing a gray tank top stained with grease. Her hair was tucked under a faded baseball cap, curls poking out in defiance. A long wrench hung from the side of her tool belt, and her steel-toed boots were caked with dust and oil. Nobody looked at her. Nobody ever did. Layla worked for Chicago Diesel Works, a small but proud garage that had been subcontracted to assist Voltara with transporting and organizing their custom parts. Her job was supposed to end once the wheels were bolted and crates labeled. But she couldn't help staring at the car. That smell. Burnt polymer. Overheated connector. Something had fried itself from the inside out. She stepped closer to the crowd, edging around a pair of bored security guards, just as Aaron's voice rang out again. "Don't worry, folks. Just a software glitch." The car's display was still dead. The techs were talking rapidly now, one shaking his head. A rep from the executive team whispered something to Aaron, who responded with a sharp hand wave. Layla raised her voice, calm and clear. "Your power bus is cooked." Every head turned. Aaron blinked. "Excuse me? You've got a micro-arc through your secondary capacitor line," Layla said, nodding at the car. "I smelled it from the back. Your system's pulling power but not completing the loop. That's why you've got black screens and blinking headlights. Also, your insulation's probably compromised." Aaron's face twitched with irritation. "And you are?" "Layla. Mechanic. I was helping your team offload parts this morning." He raised an eyebrow, chuckling dryly. "And now you're giving engineering advice?" "Just telling you what's wrong." The room stirred. A few attendees turned toward her, intrigued by the unexpected interruption. One reporter lifted her phone to record. Aaron smirked, clearly amused now. "You think you can fix a $4 million prototype in front of half the auto world? If you let me." Laughter rippled from the front rows. A young man in a blazer whispered to his friend, "This should be good." Aaron gave her a theatrical bow, sweeping his hand toward the car. Sure. Fix it, and I'll marry you. The audience howled. Someone whistled. Layla didn't laugh. She didn't flinch. She walked calmly toward the stage, pulled her gloves from her back pocket, and snapped them on. The sound was sharp, like a challenge. Security hesitated. Aaron waved them off, still grinning. Let her have her fun. She stepped up to the car. And the room went silent. She crouched beside the car like she'd done it 1,000 times before, because she had. Not with million-dollar prototypes, no. But with school buses that wouldn't start in the middle of February. With tow trucks that blew a valve in the middle of a rush-hour bridge. With diesel rigs that had deadlines and no time for excuses. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here to fix a broken machine. Layla unzipped a narrow pocket on the side of her toolbox and pulled out what looked like a Frankenstein device, cobbled together from old voltmeters, copper wire, and a battery module from an e-bike. She placed it gently against the control terminal of the vehicle. The small screen flickered to life. Then she pressed the probe into the car's diagnostic port. One of Voltara's engineers leaned forward, confused. That's not standard. Layla didn't look up. Neither is the problem. Aaron had stopped smirking. The crowd didn't know what to think. What had been a passing joke was turning into something else. Something serious. She tapped on the readout screen, then reached for a tool roll on her hip and selected a precision screwdriver. Your controller's feedback loop is overloaded. Not from software, from poor placement. She glanced up at the tech standing awkwardly nearby. Did you install this module after the heat sink was mounted? He nodded slowly, realizing the implication a second too late. Layla sighed. So when it expanded with heat, it pressed against your grounding loop. Burned it from the inside. It's not a glitch, it's a structural oversight. That drew a gasp. She reached into the open relay box and disconnected a thin, nearly invisible wire. Then she peeled back the insulation with surgical care, revealing a tiny spot of charred metal, just enough to interrupt the entire system. Yep, she said softly, almost to herself. There it is. Aaron folded his arms, eyes narrowed. He was no longer annoyed. He was nervous. The CO, who had stayed in the back, leaned forward ever so slightly. Layla wrapped a small copper insulator sleeve around the wire, then tightened the ends with thermal tape. She rerouted the power through a temporary override, isolating the loop to prevent a cascade. It was crude. It wasn't pretty. But it would work. When she reconnected the primary, the dashboard beeped. Then blinked. Then glowed a soft, even blue. The crowd gasped. The headlights pulsed once, then settled into a steady glow. The screen above the car flashed the diagnostic logo. And then came the sound. A low, almost whispering hum, smooth, steady, flawless. The V12 whisper was alive. Layla stood slowly, brushed off her knees, and wiped the sweat from her brow. The gloves came off with a snap, falling into her toolbox with a quiet finality. Her job was done. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the silence cracked with applause. It started small, one tech clapping, then another. Then someone whistled. Then the floodgates opened. The crowd roared. Phones were up again, cameras flashing, not at the car, but at her. The girl in oil-stained boots who just fixed what Voltara's finest couldn't. Aaron didn't clap. He couldn't. His face was flushed red with something caught between humiliation and disbelief. The moment wasn't his anymore. The spotlight had moved, and it wasn't coming back. Layla turned toward him, expression calm. Guess you're gonna need that ring. The crowd exploded. Aaron forced a tight-lipped smile. You bypassed the fault. That doesn't mean you fixed it. No, she said. I diagnosed the root, isolated the failure, and prevented permanent damage. Your team can do the paperwork. I just stopped you from blowing your launch in front of the world. That stung. Because it was true. A reporter elbowed to the front. Ma'am, do you have a background in EV design? Nope. Where did you study? Didn't. I learned under engines, not professors. Another camera flash. More reporters circled. Aaron stepped back. It wasn't just the crowd or the embarrassment. It was how easily she'd seen the problem, something his entire team had missed. And more than that, the way she moved, like she didn't care about being watched. Like this was routine. She walked off the stage without another word, toolbox in hand. Behind her, the Voltara CEO followed, ignoring Aaron's frozen stance. Several executives trailed close behind. Layla stopped at the base of the stage, rolling her sleeves up, revealing a jagged scar down her forearm, evidence of battles past. She looked up to find the CEO catching up to her. "That was remarkable," he said. She nodded. "Your launch is safe. But your relay mounts need reworking." He didn't blink. "I'd like to talk about more than just this engine." From across the room, Aaron watched them disappear into a side hallway. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something unfamiliar in his gut. Doubt. The interview room wasn't flashy. A plain white table, 2 ergonomic chairs, a pitcher of water, and a tablet resting in the center. Still, Layla felt the weight of what it represented. For years, she'd watched men in blazers sit across tables like this one, making decisions that echoed through factories, garages, and homes. This time, she wasn't delivering a part. She wasn't asking for a chance. She was being invited. The Voltara CEO sat across from her, sleeves rolled up, tie slightly loosened now that the crowd was gone. He was calm but alert, like someone who knew when he was witnessing something rare. "I did a little asking around," he said, scrolling through something on the tablet. "You've never worked in a design lab, but you've rebuilt over 24 diesel systems, custom-rigged your own hybrid scooter, and reverse-engineered a damaged military generator during a blizzard." Layla shrugged, not impressed with herself. "That was a rough winter. Our neighborhood lost heat for 3 days. You got the power back? Someone had to." He smiled, not in amusement, but in respect. "We have 1,000 applicants a year who can write dissertations on theoretical torque distribution. But not one of them has the instincts you showed out there. You didn't just fix a glitch, you spotted a design flaw under pressure. That's not education. That's mastery." She raised an eyebrow. "So what are you offering?" "A position. Senior level. Engineering operations. You'd report directly to our /ND. Salary is competitive. Full relocation, lab access, design credits. And I'm not talking PR fluff. I want you on the schematic board, not a billboard." Layla paused. She wasn't used to this. Offers didn't come her way wrapped in corporate polish and polished contracts. Most of her work came through phone calls from panicked truckers or desperate clients who couldn't afford dealership repairs. The kind that paid cash and thanked her with a 6-pack or an old radio. But this was different. "I didn't finish college," she said. "Don't care. I don't know the politics." "Good. We have enough of that." She leaned back. "Then why me?" The CEO leaned forward. "Because people like you remind us what engineering should be. Not polished slides and buzzwords. Problem solving. Innovation in dirty gloves." She stared at him a moment longer. Then, slowly, she nodded. "On one condition." "Name it." "I bring my own tools." He grinned. That was a given. They shook hands. By the time she stepped out of the room, the hallway outside had quieted. The chaos of the expo had died down. She was halfway to the back lot when she heard footsteps behind her. Aaron. No longer polished. No longer cocky. Just tired. And maybe something else, uncertain. "Layla," he said, breath catching. She stopped, turned slightly. He ran a hand through his hair. "I owe you an apology." She didn't say anything. "I was arrogant," he said. "I saw uniform and made assumptions. And then I got humiliated. Deserved it." Still, she said nothing. Aaron looked at the ground. "What you did out there, it wasn't luck. You knew. You felt the system. I haven't seen someone move like that since, ever. You're used to labs, she finally said. I'm used to engines breaking in real life. He gave a half laugh. Clearly. There was a pause. Then he added softer. You made me look like an idiot. You made yourself look like an idiot. She corrected, her tone matter-of-fact. I just didn't stop you. He accepted that, nodding. Then, with a flicker of his old charm, more subdued now, he smirked. You know, I did say I'd marry you if you fixed the car. She let out a small laugh, finally. You did. Got half the room as witnesses, too. I stand by it, he said, still smirking, but not joking. Maybe not today. But someday. If you ever let me. She tilted her head. You're persistent. Engineer's flaw, he replied. She shook her head, amused despite herself. If you really want a chance, earn it. Start by learning from the people who don't look like you. He took that in seriously. Deal. They stood there for a beat longer, no one rushing away. A strange quiet settled, the kind that came after a storm, not empty, just peaceful. She stepped away first, toolbox swinging gently at her side. Behind her, Aaron didn't follow. But he watched. Not like a man watching a rival. Like a man watching a force of nature he finally respected. The morning sun streamed through the massive windows of the Voltara R&D facility. Unlike the polished chaos of the expo, this space felt like the future had quietly unfolded behind steel and glass. Sleek prototypes lined one side of the hangar, tools were neatly arranged on rolling stations, and LED panels pulsed with life across the design floor. But in the center of it all stood something new. Not just a vehicle, but an idea made real. The LM Delta 1. Layla circled the chassis, stylus in one hand, tablet in the other. Her hair was pulled back into a knot this time, safety glasses perched on her face, and her name was stitched in clean embroidery on a pristine lab coat, though grease still stained her boots. A group of engineers, men and women alike, many fresh out of grad school, listened as she walked them through the schematic. You're thinking in horizontal redundancies. That's fine for road stability, but not when you're carrying modular components with independent charge cycles, she explained, voice firm. Look here. She tapped a section of the digital render. This relay configuration isolates the voltage spikes during a failsafe, preventing system-wide burnout. This design doesn't guess, it survives. They nodded, scribbled notes, asked questions. No one interrupted. No one challenged her without reason. Because in 3 months, she had earned not just their attention, but their respect. Across the floor, a few top execs watched through the glass conference wall, murmuring quietly. She didn't just fix the prototype. One whispered. She rebuilt our approach. She's not a mechanic anymore. Another added. She's a cornerstone. When the team dispersed for lunch, Layla stayed behind, running simulations. Her fingers moved fast, but her mind moved faster, already seeing what didn't exist yet. The LM Delta 1 wasn't just a car. It was a bridge between real-world grit and cleanroom precision. A machine that could handle Chicago's potholes and Tokyo's circuits in the same breath. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Aaron stood at the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked different. Still neat, but less polished. A little more real. Like someone who'd been watching, listening, learning. I figured you'd forget to eat again, he said, holding 1 cup out. She took it, nodded. Thanks. He leaned on the table beside her, eyes falling on the tablet displaying the new drivetrain. You did it, he said after a while. We did it, she corrected, though her voice was quiet. He looked at her sideways. Do you still think I'm an arrogant jackass? She smirked. Mostly. He laughed. Fair. They stood in silence, the kind that had evolved over these months, not uncomfortable, just layered. Familiar. He glanced toward the car. They're naming the next-gen controller after you. I know. They want you to speak at the Munich Symposium next month. I said no. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not doing this for cameras, she said. I'm doing this for the engines. He nodded, understanding. There was a pause. Then he added, You know, I haven't forgotten what I said at the expo. She turned to him, skeptical. The if you fix it, I'll marry you bit? Yeah. She raised an eyebrow. You said that as a joke. I did, he admitted. But it's only a joke until someone actually does it. She crossed her arms. You're seriously bringing that up now? Look, he said, his tone suddenly more earnest. I don't mean rings in churches and all that today. I'm saying I meant the spirit of it. The respect. The commitment. To what? To recognizing what I couldn't see before. To valuing what matters. And maybe to seeing where this goes. She studied him for a long second. Then, with a sigh, turned back to the prototype. You want to impress me? Desperately. Good. Then fix the regenerative brake algorithm. Your last patch pulled too much from the battery under high torque. Fix that, and maybe I'll let you take me to dinner. He grinned. Now that's a proposal I understand. Later that day, a press conference was held to unveil the LM Delta I. The hall was filled with journalists, designers, and curious competitors. Cameras clicked, flashes pulsed, and expectations were high. But when the curtain lifted, no executive walked on stage. No suit and tie. No high-tech animation. Layla stepped forward in her lab coat and boots, with her hands in her pockets and her voice steady. This is not just a car, she said. This is a challenge. To everyone who thinks brilliance only comes from boardrooms and Ivy Leagues. This is a machine built by hands that knew how to listen to engines before they ever read about them. A machine that blends science with street precision with practicality. She paused, looked directly into the crowd. This is what happens when you stop underestimating people who work in the shadows. The applause was thunderous. Not forced. Not obligatory. Earned. After the event, as the reporters filed out, someone snapped a photo of Layla and Aaron standing beside the LM Delta I. In the picture, she was mid-laugh, him holding a wrench like a peace offering. It went viral in hours. They called it the engineer's apology. Months later, that same image would hang in Voltara's design wing. Beneath it, a plaque would read, Designed by Layla Morgan, proof that genius has no uniform. And in small letters beneath that, he joked about a ring. She gave him a revolution.